Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today I get to show you guys an absolutely amazing LEGO Star Wars custom model. This is the Resistance A-Wing, the RZ-2. I believe this is maybe the first of the custom models that we've put up in the web store that's come from this latest trilogy from Star Wars. And the RZ-2 A-Wing is a very close adaptation to the original model, feeling like a slightly more updated, faster, sleeker, and I'm gonna suppose more deadly version of the original fighter. The designer Thomas Jenkins did an absolutely excellent job adapting this model. It is slightly thinner than the minifig scale A-Wing and also slightly longer, matching up with the dimensions of how you see the model within the movies. I'm gonna be showing this model in its full details and give you a nice comparison and breakdown throughout this video. And before we get started, I would like to say that if you wanted to build this yourself, you can find the instructions at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. Included is the PDF step-by-step building guide, as well as a digital parts list file for uploading and ordering all the pieces you're going to need to make this thing. And on top of that, if you get the model instructions, there are 3 different color variations included. All the different colors that you can see on the models here have been brick built in different ways, so the PDF building instructions have changed, the part count and all the pieces are slightly different as well. And Thomas, I think, really outdid himself because all the color detailing is brick built and there's quite a lot of variation required to make all 3 different models, which is really cool. Anyways, getting instructions from us is a great way to help support what we do here at the channel, as well as help support the amazing designers that we work with, like Thomas. You can click the link in the description below if you want to see more, and let's get into the review. This model measures to 10¼ inches, 26 centimeters long, 7¼ inches, 18 centimeters, and nearly 2 inches high, or 7 centimeters. This makes it basically the same width and height as the original minifig scale A-Wing model, and only a little bit longer. After calculating the size and shape of this model, comparing it to the one from the original trilogy, I'd say the scale here is just about perfect, though on the original Wikipedia page, the dimensions of the RZ-2 show it to be shorter than the original A-Wing, but that's just not true if you look at the cockpit, if it's the same size, and measure the distance between the end of it and the nose of the ship. Also, the body of the RZ-2 is just a little bit thinner as well, and I really like how Thomas actually did make the body of the RZ-2 just slightly thinner than the body of the RZ-1 here between the 2 LEGO models. So when looking at both of these models together, Jarek's RZ-1 and Thomas's RZ-2, they might feel pretty darn close at first glance, but the build style is very different. The internals have changed a lot in order to get those subtle differences on the outside to look the way they are. Now, like I said, this is a perfect minifig scale model, which means all of the different ships you see flashing by the screen, also built to minifig scale, are the correct relative size compared to each other. So that means if you set this up in dioramas, they'll look like they scale with each other within universe. And that's something that we just really like to do with the Star Wars models, especially because it just makes dioramas more fun. And it's also a build challenge that I think a lot of the designers really like to take on, including us. So anyways, there's 3 different types of A-Wings. Let's just go through some of the details. Let's start off with the white and blue, which I think is the most commonly seen one, at least the first very recognizable one from the new trilogy. The body is built here in mostly white with some wonderful dark blue highlights. I think most people's eyes are initially drawn to that wonderful dark blue curve that comes away from the wings. It's a relatively simple building technique, and it absolutely makes it for the color highlights on this ship. Personally, my favorite part of the ship here in terms of detailing are the 2 little red stripes on the right hand side, and then really the design parts of the RZ-2 that make it different from the other A-Wings is the fact that the edges of the wings are a bit thicker here. The angled edge of the ship has just a little bit more of the flat space between the back of the gun and the back of the wing here, and then also the fins are a little bit thinner. They have slightly harsher angles, and also the build of the back of the cockpit has a slightly different shape as well. Now when it comes to a clean looking design, I don't know if there's too many ships that feel quite as solid as this one, especially when picking it up. Every aspect of this build feels really strong, and the only parts that I would say when picking this thing up that maybe you should avoid is some of the flat plate detailing towards the front of the nose, and also these thin little edges on the back by the thrusters. At the end of the day, this custom build is very swooshable. The A-wing is very small and light compared to a lot of the other custom models, and it also doesn't have a lot in terms of long thin wings or just a strange shape that might be structurally unsound. This really is built very much like a block. It feels as solid as it looks. But still getting into the details, I think probably one of my favorite build aspects to this entire model is the way that tire sinks into the back of this cylindrical piece here. The ridges of the black rubber match pretty seamlessly, and it looks like the thin edge of a thruster, with of course the trans yellow or trans green, neon green highlights glowing through to make a bit of that glowing engine thrust look. I almost forgot, there's actually functions to this model as well. Just like you might be able to imagine, you can take the cockpit windscreen off and a pilot sits in with no problem. He doesn't actually stud there, but there's enough tight space and tension that when you put the windscreen back on, he just simply doesn't move. And the build for the interior is actually pretty nice. You have two little clipped-on pieces to show some controls, and even a little bit of extra build detail to show off the seat. Also, from the bottom, you can see that there are 3 different folding points for landing gear, and actually if you just look at the bottom of the ship, almost everything here is perfectly studless, which I really like, because if you wanted to set this thing up on a display stand of sorts, you could see the underbelly of the ship. Before I move on to the other color details, the last little thing I'd like to point out is just some of the detailing by these thin fins. I'm a big fan of these panel pieces that cover up some of the undersides of the studs here, and there's even a nice use of this little Technic cylindrical piece. It's like that little Technic pin cover. It can only be seen on the underside, the inside of the fins, and it just shows a little bit of extra detail thrown into a space where a designer would often maybe not want to draw your eye, but Thomas, I think, is pretty confident in his detailing abilities, and I just like that every little corner has got something to catch your eye in some way. Now let's move on to the red A-wing. This is basically a color inversion of the classic red A-wing. Now the outside edges of the ship are red, which is basically the primary color, and then there is a bit of white built in as sort of a racing stripe almost that goes down the front. Here, once again, there are some very fun details to notice. First, the white strip that goes around the cockpit gets a little bit thinner as it moves down towards the nose, and that's achieved with a combination of curved wing plate pieces and a side-built 1x4 slope. And also, you'll notice that this thing isn't a perfectly symmetrical build, but one of the engines is actually red while the other one is white. Even though these are the new, more advanced resistance A-wing Starfighters, even here you can see that they are slightly scrappy, and perhaps it's got a replaced engine, maybe from another ship. It's hard to tell, but something tells me with a paint job this clean that probably wouldn't have originally been an intentional part of the manufacturing. Also, I didn't talk about this from the white and blue version of the model, though the build doesn't change here on the red one, but the line between the top and bottom along the edge here is completely rounded over. That's built with mostly Technic pieces, which I like, and it helps to make this curved bit pretty seamless. This, especially when you're comparing with the original RZ-1 model, is the easiest place to see how this ship is thinner than the original version. It's a wonderful building technique, extremely strong. And now let's jump on over to the last color variation. This is the dark green A-wing. Here, this color variant actually matches the closest with how the original A-wing was done, with a single color stripe down the center with most of the body being white. You'll notice that color stripe in the middle doesn't get wider or thinner, it's just a solid line this time, but by far the most interesting part of the ship here in terms of unique build design is the yellow curve. You'll see the arch piece, the arch brick that's built on its side, and then filled in with plates on the top. And then you also see that there are a couple of slope pieces on either side that add just a little bit more of a bump, a little bit more of a surface variation, and it just kind of breaks up the model in a slightly different way compared to the others. And I also didn't mention it for any of the models, but this is just a close look at the cannons, the guns on either side. They're held on by one stud, but because that stud is sticking into one of those Technic pinholes, there's actually a lot of friction there. You can bend it up and down if you like. So I suppose that's another function that I guess I forgot to mention until just now. And then just in case I didn't show the bottom of the red or green, this is all three of the A-Wings underbellies all at the same time, so you can see what they look like. Now let me flip them back over, and here are all of the ships together. Thomas did an excellent job designing this ship. It's a super unique build on the inside, and all of the dimensions that really make this unique compared to the original version of the A-Wing are captured perfectly in Lego bricks, and you can really see the difference in how it changed between the original RZ-1 and the updated RZ-2. Let me know what you guys think about this build. What types of custom models would you like to see us do in the future? And if you wanted to make this ship for yourself, you can always get the instructions at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. If you guys want to see more Resistance ships, let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.